so the arguments against imperialism are going to be really kind of twofold, right? One of them is more of an idealistic argument, and that is that the United States is not built on the ideas that one country should be able to rule over another country. The United States is built on the idea that that everybody should be able to rule themselves. So ideologically, it's against American principles, against the American sense of itself to start to acquire an empire like the British or the French. Okay. The other argument was a racist argument, and that was that the problem that they found out about Cuba was that most of the Cubans are not white, and so what they came to believe was that if you incorporated non-white people into the United States would not be able to survive because non-white people can't rule themselves. That was the same reason why, I mean, they had really the same debate during the Mexican-American War in 1848, where people were saying, we should just annex all of Mexico. And the Congress said, no, we don't want Mexico because it's full of Mexicans, right? You follow what I'm saying? They didn't mind taking the Southwest because there was nobody there, essentially, right? But they didn't want Mexico because it was full of Mexicans, and Mexicans can't rule themselves because they're not white. Okay, basically that's the argument that they made. And they make the same argument here about not just Cuba, but anywhere, of the Puerto Rico and the Philippines as well, right? Okay, so those are going to be the arguments against creating an empire. Okay, the arguments in favor of creating an empire are going to be these three. Okay, the first one is what we call the white man's burden. This is actually the title of a poem that was written by Rudyard Kipling. And Rudyard Kipling was a British author. He wrote the Jungle Book, right? He was a very committed British imperialist. He believed that the British, although they were plundering other countries like India, he believed that that was good for the Indians because they were being civilized, right? And the British called it the civilizing mission. They had a civilizing mission, and wherever they went, they brought civilization with them. And this fits into the idea that the white Europeans are at the pinnacle of civilization, and that all of the people of the world are at different stages of civilization, and that the way you could determine the stages was by skin color, right? So essentially what that means is the whiter you are, the more civilized you are, and the darker you are, the less civilized you are, okay? But there's also this idea of progress, which I think we've talked about a little bit, and what that means is that everybody is moving toward a certain goal, a certain maturity, right? And the belief of people in the Europe and in the United States is that, well, we white people have achieved the ultimate level of maturity. That doesn't mean we don't have any farther to go, but we're ahead of everybody else, right? So the where that fits into the idea of imperialism is that when for example, when the British go to India, they say, okay, well, we're gonna take your stuff, but at the same time, we're gonna make you advance like us by teaching you democracy and industrialization and all these different things, right? And that would be their duty, kind of like being a big brother, right? That if you're in a family and you have an older brother and a younger brother, and the older brother takes responsibility for the younger brother to help him, come along, to help him to mature, okay? And that's the way this is kind of like the paternalistic attitude. I can tell you that the first governor of the Philippines, the first American governor of the Philippines, is going to say that we had a duty to civilize our little brown brothers, right? You get what I'm saying? Okay, so this is the idea of the white man's burden, that the white man is at the pinnacle of civilization, and he has a duty to bring civilization to less advanced civilization, less advanced people. Okay, so remember last week we talked about social Darwinism, and we said that social Darwinism. Somebody explain that to me. I want to see if you guys were listening.
Social Darwinism is basically the idea that if you're poor, you deserve to die, or it's like the natural selection type of thinking, except applied to capitalism.
Right,
Like
except so
if you have enough money, or you can survive. If you don't have enough money, you don't survive.
okay, that's a you're right. Okay, but what I want us to do is to think about it in the terms that Darwin thought about it, right? Because he was thinking about biology, and he was saying that in nature, some organisms are going to be able to adapt and survive, and others are not going to be able to, and they'll die out, right? So what is that? They adapt to what? What happens?
The environment changes.
Exactly. There's a change of environment. Okay. So if we're looking at the natural environment, we say, okay, we live in a tropical area, and then all of a sudden there's an ice age, right? So some organisms are going to be able to survive, others not. Okay. But in an economic environment, right, what is the change of environment? It's from agrarianism to industry, right? Okay. So when we looked at it last week, we said, okay, well, in terms of individuals in society, some individuals are going to be able to adapt to the new industrial reality, and they'll survive, but others won't. And the ones who can't adapt should be allowed to die, so that the ones that are left over would be stronger. That makes sense? That's what social Darwinism is. Okay. And that was the way it was in terms of individuals in society, but it also works in terms of countries in the world, right? And who's going to be a big believer in this is going to be Theodore Roosevelt, right? Theodore Roosevelt will believe that the change from agriculture to industry is going to create a challenge for the different countries of the world. Those countries that can modernize are going to become stronger and survive. Those countries that can't modernize are going to die out, right? And we can see the example of that in China and Japan, right? Because China refused to modernize. They said, we're too cool to modernize. We're already perfect. Why should we modernize? And they ended up being carved up by the European powers, okay? But Japan recognized the threat, modernize or be colonized, so they did modernize. They forced modernization, right? But the result of it was that they also became an imperial power, and they became an imperial power in Korea and China, and later throughout Southeast Asia, right? You guys are with me? Okay, so this is the idea of social Darwinism. If you don't modernize, if you don't adapt to the new economic reality, you're going to die out as a country. And Roosevelt was very insistent that the United States should modernize and should acquire overseas empire in order to be able to adapt to this new economic environment. Okay, you guys are with me? So that's going to be another argument in favor of imperialism.